The crying pierced through the constant hum of Kepler Gateway like a blade through silk. Dr. Elena Vasquez stopped mid-stride, her presentation materials scattering across the polished floor of the transit station's main concourse. Around her, the usual chaos of interspecies travel continued, humans rushing toward departure gates, tall Phylorians gliding with their characteristic fluid grace, and various other species navigating the sprawling hub that connected a dozen worlds. But that sound cut through everything else. Elena had heard crying babies before. As a xenobiologist with 2 children of her own, she was intimately familiar with the desperate wails of infants. This was different. The pitch was higher, more musical, with harmonics that seemed to resonate directly in her chest cavity. Phylorian, she realized. And in distress. "Ma'am, you're blocking the walkway," said a security officer, his tone professional but impatient. Behind Elena, a crowd of travelers was building up, their muttered complaints growing louder. "Sorry," she mumbled, quickly gathering her scattered research notes. The presentation for the Xenological Institute was in 20 minutes, and this was her one chance to secure funding for her life's work. She'd spent 3 years developing her theories about interspecies neural compatibility, and today's meeting could make or break her career. The crying intensified. Elena looked up from her papers to see the source of the sound. About 30 meters away, near the information kiosks, a young Phylorian woman sat hunched over a small bundle. Her normally graceful posture was broken, shoulders shaking with exhaustion. The pale blue luminescence of her skin had dimmed to an unhealthy gray, and her 4 arms moved in frantic, helpless gestures around the crying infant. Other travelers gave them a wide berth. Humans hurried past with uncomfortable expressions, while other Phylorians observed from a distance but didn't approach. There was something about the scene that radiated private desperation, a universal language of parental helplessness that transcended species. Elena checked her chronometer. 18 minutes until her presentation. The Institute's review board had waited 6 months to schedule this meeting. If she missed it, they wouldn't reschedule. Her research would remain unfunded, unpublished, and forgotten. The infant's cries reached a new level of intensity, and the mother's bioluminescent patterns flickered with what Elena recognized as extreme distress. Phylorians communicated as much through their skin's light patterns as through vocalizations, and this woman was broadcasting pure anguish. Elena made a decision that would change everything. She walked over to the struggling mother, her scientific mind automatically cataloging details. The woman appeared young by Phylorian standards, probably equivalent to a human in her early 20s. Her clothing was simple but well-made, suggesting middle-class origins. The infant couldn't be more than a few weeks old, its tiny form wrapped in traditional Phylorian birthing cloths that shimmered with protective biopatterns. "Excuse me," Elena said softly, activating her universal translator. "Are you all right?" The Phylorian woman looked up with large, opalescent eyes that seemed to hold depths of exhaustion. When she spoke, her voice carried the melodic quality of her species, but it was strained with fatigue. "I apologize for the disturbance," she said, the translator rendering her words in accented English. "My daughter, she has been crying for 17 hours. Nothing I do comforts her." Elena's heart clenched. 17 hours of continuous crying would drive any parent to the edge of despair. "Have you tried feeding her?" "Yes." "And changing her?" "And singing the traditional songs?" "And walking?" And the woman's voice broke. "I have tried everything my mother taught me, everything the medical texts suggest. Nothing works." The infant's cries seemed to grow more desperate, and Elena noticed other travelers beginning to stare with increasing annoyance. A few humans were muttering about alien noise, and even some Phylorians were showing signs of agitation, their skin patterns flickering with irritation. "What's your name?" Elena asked, settling down beside the woman despite the growing crowd of onlookers. "Lisatel of the Seventh Harmony," the woman replied. "And this is my daughter, Nyatel. I'm Elena. Dr. Elena Vasquez." She looked at the crying infant, noting the distress patterns flickering across the baby's skin. "May I?" Lisatel hesitated, and Elena understood why. Thylaurians were protective of their young, and allowing a member of another species to handle an infant was unprecedented. But desperation was a powerful motivator. "You have children?" Lisatel asked. "Two. A boy and a girl." Elena's voice carried the warmth of maternal experience. "Sometimes babies cry for reasons we can't understand. Sometimes they just need a different touch." Slowly, carefully, Lisatel extended the bundle toward Elena. The moment Elena's hands made contact with the infant, something extraordinary happened. The crying stopped. Not gradually, not with the hiccuping subsidence of a tired child, but instantly and completely. The baby's distressed skin patterns shifted to a soft, contented glow, and she made a small sound that could only be described as a purr. Lisatel stared in shock. Around them, the gathered crowd fell silent. "How?" Lisatel whispered. Elena was equally stunned. She'd expected to try the usual human techniques, rocking, gentle pressure, perhaps humming a lullaby. Instead, the moment she'd touched the child, she'd felt something unprecedented, a brief, electric connection, as if their nervous systems had somehow synchronized. The baby looked up at Elena with eyes that seemed far too aware for an infant. For a moment, Elena could have sworn she felt something impossible, a flash of recognition, of gratitude, of communication without words. "I don't know," Elena said honestly, but even as she spoke, her scientific mind was racing. The neural patterns she'd been studying, the theoretical framework she'd developed about interspecies consciousness, could there be a practical application she'd never imagined? "Dr. Vasquez to Conference Room 7, the station's public address system announced. Dr. Vasquez to Conference Room 7. Her presentation. The funding that could secure her future." Elena looked down at the peaceful infant in her arms, then at Lisatel's amazed face. "I have to go," she said reluctantly, beginning to hand the baby back. The moment the infant left Elena's arms, the crying resumed with renewed intensity. Lisatel took her daughter back, but her eyes remained fixed on Elena. "Please," she said, her voice barely audible over the infant's wails. "I don't understand what just happened, but please don't leave." Elena stood frozen between two futures, the career she'd worked toward for her entire life, and a mystery that could reshape everything she thought she knew about interspecies biology. The crying grew louder, and she made her choice. Conference Room 7 was empty by the time Elena arrived, carrying baby Niatel in her arms. The silence fell deafening after the chaos of the concourse. Her presentation materials were scattered across the polished table where the review board had waited, and left. A single note remained: "Dr. Vasquez, your absence has been noted. Please contact the Institute to reschedule at your earliest convenience." Elena knew there would be no rescheduling. The Xenological Institute's funding committee met twice a year, and the next session was already fully booked with proposals deemed more promising than hers. "I'm sorry," Lisatel said from the doorway, her translator converting her melodic Thylaurian into guilt-ridden English. "I didn't realize your career opportunity." "It's fine," Elena said, though her heart was breaking. She looked down at the peaceful infant in her arms. Niatel's skin patterns pulsed with a soft, steady rhythm that Elena was beginning to recognize as contentment. Some things are more important. But even as she said it, Elena wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. "No, it is not fine." Lisatel's skin flickered with patterns that the translator interpreted as deep distress. "You sacrificed something precious for strangers. For us." Elena studied the young Thylaurian mother. Up close, she could see the exhaustion etched in every line of Lisatel's elegant features. Dark patterns under her eyes spoke of sleepless nights, and her normally luminous skin had a dull, unhealthy cast. "When did this start?" Elena asked. "The crying, I mean." 3 days ago. Since we arrived at the station." Lisatel settled into one of the conference room chairs, her forearms moving in what Elena was learning to recognize as nervous gestures. The journey from Milos Prime was difficult. Niatel was born during the crossing, and she seemed different from the beginning. "Different how?" Lisatel hesitated, her skin patterns shifting the colors Elena couldn't interpret. She doesn't respond to our traditional calming techniques. The harmonics that should soothe any Thylaurian infant seem to agitate her further. The medical bay on the transport vessel could find nothing wrong, but she won't stop crying except when I hold her. Yes. Lisatel's eyes met Elena's. What does that mean? Elena wished she knew. Her research into interspecies neural compatibility had been purely theoretical, mathematical models and computer simulations exploring the possibility of cross-species consciousness interaction. She'd never imagined encountering practical evidence. May I ask why you're traveling? Elena said, deflecting while she processed what was happening. Refuge, Lisatel said simply. My mate was killed in the mining accident on Milos Prime 6 months ago. Without family support, raising a child alone became impossible. I'm traveling to the human colony on Kepler 442c, where there's supposedly work for Thylaurian engineers. Elena felt a chill. You're planning to live among humans? With a baby who only responds to human touch? I had no choice. Lisatel's patterns flashed with what looked like anger. The Harmony Council declared me unfit because I couldn't calm my own child. They said Nyatel was defective, that she should be placed in a care facility. So you left everything behind. Everything. The single word carried the weight of a shattered life. Elena looked down at Nyatel, who was gazing up at her with those strangely aware eyes. The baby's skin patterns were hypnotic, swirling designs that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Elena's heartbeat. Lisatel, what do you know about the Resonance War? The Thylaurian woman's skin immediately darkened to deep purple, fear. Why do you ask about that? Because I think it might be relevant. Elena's scientific training was kicking in, connections forming in her mind. The war ended 300 years ago, but there were stories, legends, about humans and Thylaurians who could share consciousness. Forbidden stories, Lisatel said quickly. Speaking of such things is illegal on Milos Prime. But you know them. My grandmother used to whisper them when I was young. Tales of the Bridgers, beings who could cross the mental barriers between species. The council taught us they were myths, dangerous fantasies that led to the war. Elena felt her excitement building. What if they weren't myths? What if some genetic memory, some dormant capability, is emerging in your daughter? That's impossible. Is it? Elena stood, still holding Nyatel, and began pacing. Thylaurian neural development doesn't fully complete until the 3rd year of life. What if Nyatel's brain is developing connections that were lost centuries ago? What if she needs both Thylaurian and human neural input to develop properly? Lisatel stared at her. You're suggesting my daughter is, what? Some kind of evolutionary throwback? I'm suggesting she might be something new. Or something very, very old. Before Lisatel could respond, the conference room's door chimed. A security officer entered, followed by a woman in the crisp uniform of station administration. Dr. Vasquez, the administrator said. I'm Commander Sarah Park, station security. We've received several complaints about disturbances in the main concourse. The crying has stopped, Elena said, indicating the peaceful baby in her arms. Yes, we noticed. That's actually what we need to discuss. Commander Park's expression was serious. Station sensors recorded some unusual energy patterns when you made contact with the infant. Our science team is curious. Elena felt a chill of premonition. What kind of energy patterns? Neural resonance signatures that shouldn't be possible between different species. Park stepped closer. Dr. Vasquez, we're going to need you to come with us. All of you. Are we under arrest? Lisatel asked, her skin flashing alarm patterns. Not yet, Park said. But this station falls under Joint Earth-Thylos jurisdiction. Both governments have strict protocols regarding potential interspecies consciousness contact. Elena's heart sank. She knew those protocols. They'd been established after the Resonance War to prevent the psychic connections that had nearly destroyed both civilizations. Anyone suspected of bridging abilities faced immediate detention and neurological suppression. "Commander," Elena said carefully, "this is just a baby who responds to gentle handling." "Dr. Vasquez, our sensors registered a Class 5 neural bridge event. That hasn't happened in 3 centuries. Park's voice was grim. "Whether you know it or not, you and this infant just made first contact with something that both our species agreed should stay buried." As security officers flanked them, Elena looked down at Nyatel, who was watching the proceedings with those unnaturally intelligent eyes. The baby's skin patterns were shifting to new configurations, and Elena could swear she felt a whisper of alien thought brushing against her consciousness. What had she gotten herself into? And more importantly, what was Nyatel trying to tell her? The detention facility was sterile and frightening. Elena sat in a white-walled room that hurt her eyes, holding Nyatel while Lisatel paced frantically nearby. The baby had been crying for 2 hours straight, ever since they'd been separated and then reunited in this clinical environment. Every time Elena tried to soothe her, security sensors beeped ominously, and voices from hidden speakers warned about unauthorized neural contact. "This is insane," Elena said for the 10th time. "She's just a baby. A baby who registers consciousness patterns that violate 3 centuries of interspecies law," replied Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's chief xenopsychologist. He stood behind reinforced glass, studying them like specimens. "The neural bridge readings we recorded were off the charts." "What does that even mean?" Lisatel demanded, her skin flashing angry red patterns. Dr. Webb consulted his tablet. "During the Resonance War, humans and Thylorians developed the ability to share consciousness directly. Mental barriers broke down. Individuality dissolved. Entire populations became hive minds, and when those minds disagreed..." He paused grimly. "The psychic feedback killed millions." Elena felt sick. "You think Nyatel is somehow recreating that?" "I think she's demonstrating capabilities that were supposed to be extinct." Webb's voice carried the weight of someone who'd studied historical horrors. "The question is whether this is an isolated mutation or the beginning of something larger." A new voice crackled through the intercom, cold, authoritative, and speaking with the crisp accent of Earth's central authority. "Dr. Vasquez, this is Director Catherine Morrison. I'm en route to the station with a specialized containment team." "Containment?" Elena stood, clutching Nyatel closer. "She's not a weapon. Any individual capable of cross-species neural bridging is classified as a potential biohazard under Section 7 of the Interspecies Security Accord," Morrison continued. "Standard protocol requires immediate neurological suppression and long-term observation." Lisatel's skin went white with terror. "What does that mean?" Dr. Webb looked uncomfortable. "It means they'll surgically disable the neural pathways that allow the bridging effect. The procedure is permanent." "You want to lobotomize my daughter?" Lisatel's voice rose to a keening wail that made Elena's teeth ache. "We want to prevent another war," Morrison's voice replied coldly. "Dr. Vasquez, preliminary scans suggest you've also developed bridging capabilities. You'll undergo the same procedure." Elena felt the world spinning around her. Everything was happening too fast. This morning she'd been a frustrated scientist late for a presentation. Now she was apparently some kind of psychic anomaly facing surgical brain alteration. "There has to be another explanation," she said desperately. "Some natural phenomenon. Dr. Vasquez." Dr. Webb's voice was gentler now. "I've been studying interspecies psychology for 15 years. What you did in the concourse is impossible according to every model we have. Thylorian and human neural structures are incompatible. There should be no way for you to communicate with that infant." "But I can." Elena looked down at Nyatel, who had stopped crying and was staring up at her with those impossibly intelligent eyes. "I can feel what she's feeling. Her confusion, her loneliness, her hope. That's exactly what we're afraid of." As if responding to Elena's words, Nyatel's skin began to glow more brightly. The patterns across her tiny body shifted into configurations Elena had never seen before, complex, mathematical designs that seemed to pulse with meaning. "She's trying to communicate," Elena breathed. "Step away from the infant," Morrison's voice commanded. "You're reinforcing the neural link." But Elena couldn't step away. The patterns on Nyatel's skin were hypnotic, drawing her deeper into some kind of shared consciousness. She felt herself falling into the baby's mind, experiencing the world through alien senses. Suddenly, she wasn't Elena anymore. She was floating in a vast space filled with light and music, the neural landscape of a developing Thylaurian mind. But this space wasn't empty. Other presences moved through the light, ancient and patient. They'd been waiting, she realized. Waiting for someone who could bridge the gap between species. Finally, a voice whispered in harmonics that bypassed her ears and spoke directly to her consciousness. "A new generation who can heal the wounds." "Who are you?" Elena asked without words. "We are what remains of the Bridgers. Those who survived the war by hiding in the spaces between minds. We have been waiting for the children who could reconnect what fear tore apart." Images flashed through Elena's consciousness, the resonance war as it really happened. Not the sanitized historical accounts, but the true horror of psychic communion twisted into a weapon. Minds forced to merge against their will, consciousness used as a battlefield, the desperate decision to sever all neural bridges to stop the madness. But it wasn't the bridges themselves that caused the war, the voice continued. It was fear. Fear of losing individual identity. Fear of truly understanding another species. The war destroyed the gift instead of learning to use it wisely. Elena saw the truth then. The bridges had been natural evolution, a step toward true interspecies harmony. But both humans and Thylaurians had panicked when they realized what was happening. The war had been a tragedy of mutual terror, not an inevitable conflict. "And now?" she asked. "Now a new generation is emerging. Children born with the gift intact, adults who can learn to bridge safely. The healing can begin, if fear doesn't destroy them first." Elena felt herself being pulled back to normal consciousness. She was sitting in the detention room again, but everything had changed. Nyatel was peaceful in her arms, her skin patterns now cycling through gentle, harmonious designs. And Elena could feel it, a warm presence in her mind, alien but not threatening. A consciousness that complemented her own rather than overwhelming it. "What did you just experience?" Dr. Webb asked urgently. Elena looked up at him through the reinforced glass. "The truth about the resonance war. And why Nyatel is so important." "Dr. Vasquez, your neural patterns are spiking again," Morrison's voice warned. "We're initiating emergency suppression protocols." "Wait." Elena stood, still holding the baby. "You don't understand. The bridges aren't weapons, they're the solution." "The solution to what?" Elena felt the truth burning in her mind, shared with her by the ancient presences who'd waited 3 centuries for this moment. To the isolation that's been killing both our species. To the fear and mistrust that's kept us apart. Nyatel isn't a threat, she's hope. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and the intercom crackled with panicked reports. "Multiple Thylaurian warships entering the system," a controller announced. "They're demanding the immediate release of what they're calling the Bridge Child." Lisa Tell went pale. "The Harmony Council. Somehow they found us." "How?" Elena demanded. "The neural resonance," Dr. Webb said grimly. "It must have been detected across light years. Both governments will be mobilizing their fleets." Elena felt Nyatel's distress spiking as the baby sensed the mounting tension. Through their connection, she could feel something else, other young minds awakening across the galaxy, drawn by the neural resonance like a beacon. The new generation of Bridgers was emerging. And the old fears were about to tear the galaxy apart again, unless Elena could find a way to prove that this time would be different. The first shots were fired while Elena was trying to convince 2 civilizations that a baby wasn't a weapon of mass destruction. Through the detention facility's viewport, she could see the Thylaurian fleet hanging in space like organic jewels, living ships that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Facing them across the void were the angular metal forms of Earth's defense fleet, bristling with weapons and radiating aggressive intent. "Stand down immediately," Admiral Santos's voice crackled through the station's communication system. "You are in violation of Sector 12 space." "We seek only the return of the bridge child," replied the Thylorian fleet commander, her melodic voice translated into harsh English. "Surrender the infant, and we will depart peacefully." Elena held Nyatel closer, feeling the baby's distress spike with each exchange of threats. Through their neural link, she could sense other young minds across the galaxy, human and Thylorian children suddenly manifesting bridging abilities as the resonance spread. "This is exactly what we feared," Director Morrison said, her holographic image flickering in the detention room. "The effect is cascading. We're receiving reports of spontaneous neural bridging events on 17 worlds." "Because fear is driving the awakening," Elena said desperately. "If we could just calm down." "Calm down?" Morrison's laugh was bitter. "We have two fleets about to start shooting at each other over a psychic infant. This is the resonance war all over again." Dr. Webb was monitoring his instruments with growing alarm. "The neural resonance is amplifying. Every time tensions increase, the bridging effect gets stronger." "It's a feedback loop," Elena realized. "The children are responding to the adults' fear by trying to bridge the gap, which makes the adults more afraid, which strengthens the effect." "How do we stop it?" Lisatel asked, her skin patterns cycling through every color of distress. Elena looked down at Nyatel, whose tiny face was scrunched with concentration. Through their connection, she could feel the baby trying to understand the chaos around her, trying to fix the broken harmony between species. "We don't stop it," Elena said quietly. "We guide it." Before anyone could ask what she meant, proximity alarms began shrieking. On the viewport's display, Elena could see weapons charging on both fleets. "Final warning," Admiral Santos announced. "Withdraw or we will consider this an act of war." "The child belongs to the Harmony," the Thylorian commander responded. "We will not abandon her to human experimentation." Elena felt something shift in Nyatel's consciousness, a building pressure like storm clouds gathering. The baby was preparing to do something, and Elena sensed it would be catastrophic. "She's going to try to force a bridge," Elena said urgently. "Between the fleets. If she connects the minds of two armies that are ready to fight. The psychic feedback could kill everyone," Dr. Webb finished. "Just like during the war." Elena made a decision that terrified her. "I have to get to the command center. I need to speak to both fleets directly." "Absolutely not," Morrison said. "You're in isolation for a reason. Director, with respect, your isolation protocols are making this worse." Elena stood, still holding Nyatel. "The baby is trying to calm the situation the only way she knows how, by bridging minds. But she's too young to do it safely. I can guide her, help her create a controlled connection instead of a chaotic one." "You want to deliberately create a neural bridge between hostile fleets?" "I want to show them what bridging really is. Not a weapon, not a violation, a conversation." Lisatel moved to Elena's side. "I'll help. Nyatel trusts both of us." "This is insane," Dr. Webb muttered, but he was already moving toward the door controls. "If this goes wrong?" "If we don't try, it'll go wrong anyway," Elena said. "At least this way, we have a chance." The command center was in chaos when they arrived. Officers from both human and Thylorian navies were shouting orders, their translators struggling to keep up with the overlapping voices. Captain Park was trying to coordinate with both fleets while monitoring the increasingly unstable neural resonance readings. "Dr. Vasquez," she said, looking up as they entered. "You shouldn't be here." "Captain, I need to speak to both fleet commanders. Directly." "That's not possible. We're in a military standoff." "Captain." Elena's voice carried new authority, strengthened by her connection to Nyatel and the ancient Bridger consciousness. "In about 30 seconds, this baby is going to attempt a forced neural bridge between two entire fleets. Unless you want to relive the worst day of the Resonance War, you'll open a channel." Captain Park stared at her for a moment, then nodded grimly. Open channels to both flagships. The main display split, showing Admiral Santos on one side and the Thylaurian fleet commander, a regal figure with silver-patterned skin, on the other. This is highly irregular, Santos said. Who is this human? The Thylaurian commander demanded. I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, Elena said, stepping forward with Nyatel in her arms. And this is Nyatel, the child you're about to go to war over. Both commanders fell silent, their attention fixed on the baby. 300 years ago, Elena continued, our species nearly destroyed each other because we were afraid of what bridging meant. We thought it was about losing ourselves, about being conquered by alien thoughts. But we were wrong. Nyatel's skin began to glow, and Elena felt the familiar tingle of neural connection beginning. But this time, instead of fighting it, she opened her mind and guided the link. This is what bridging really is, she said softly. Suddenly, everyone in the command center could feel it, not an invasion of their thoughts, but a gentle sharing of perspective. Admiral Santos experienced a flash of Thylaurian harmonic beauty, understanding for the first time why they called themselves the Harmony. The Thylaurian commander felt the human drive to protect and explore, the fierce independence that made them both admirable and frustrating. And through it all, Nyatel's innocent consciousness served as a filter, showing each species the other's hopes and fears without judgment or threat. My God, Admiral Santos whispered. This is beautiful. The child seeks only understanding, the Thylaurian commander said, her voice filled with wonder. She wishes to heal the wounds between us. Elena felt the tension in the command center dissolving as the bridge effect spread. Human and Thylaurian officers were looking at each other with new recognition, seeing past the uniforms and alien features to the shared desire for peace. This is how it should have been during the war, Elena said. Not forced connection, not mental domination, just the choice to understand each other. The reports from other worlds, Captain Park said, consulting her displays. The other children, they've stopped trying to bridge. The effect is stabilizing. Elena nodded. Through her connection to Nyatel, she could sense the network of young bridgers across the galaxy. They were still there, still capable of creating connections, but now they were calm. The demonstration had shown them, and their frightened parents, that bridging could be controlled, gentle, voluntary. So what happens now? Admiral Santos asked. Elena looked down at Nyatel, who was gazing up at her with those wise, ancient eyes. The baby's skin patterns had settled into a gentle, rhythmic glow, the visual equivalent of contentment. Now we learn, Elena said. We study how this works. We teach the children to bridge safely. We show both our species that connection doesn't mean conquest. And you, the Thylaurian commander asked. What becomes of the bridge child and her guardian? Elena felt a warm presence in her mind, not just Nyatel, but the ancient consciousness that had waited 3 centuries for this moment. She understood now what she was meant to become. We become teachers, she said. For a new generation that doesn't have to choose between being human or Thylaurian or any other species. A generation that can be all of them, together. As the fleets powered down their weapons and began the delicate process of first peaceful contact in 3 centuries, Elena held Nyatel close and prepared for the most important work of her life, raising a child who would bridge worlds. 6 months later, the Academy for Interspecies Understanding was both a miracle and a daily challenge. Elena walked through the corridors of the converted space station, observing the controlled chaos of the galaxy's first integrated educational facility. Human children played alongside young Thylaurians, their laughter mixing in harmonics that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. In one classroom, a mixed group was learning to paint with bioluminescent pigments that responded to thought. In another, teenagers from 7 different species were collaborating on a quantum physics project. And in the nursery, Nyatel, now a walking, babbling toddler, was teaching other infants the delicate art of voluntary neural bridging. The preliminary reports are extraordinary, Dr. Chen said, joining Elena at the observation window. The children are developing cognitive abilities we've never seen before. Enhanced problem solving, intuitive understanding of complex systems, and most remarkably, complete absence of xenophobic responses. Elena nodded, watching Nyatel gently touch the forehead of a human infant. For a moment, both children glowed softly, their faces peaceful and content. She's showing him how to sense emotional harmonics. By the time these children are adults, they'll understand other species better than their own parents ever could. And the neural feedback effects? Completely controlled, Elena assured her. The children are learning to create bridges that enhance rather than overwhelm. It's like they're developing a new sense, empathic perception across species barriers. Dr. Chen made notes on her tablet. The Earth Council is still nervous. They keep asking about military applications. Elena's expression darkened. There are no military applications. That's the whole point. But the strategic advantages are entirely defensive, Elena interrupted. A species that truly understands its neighbors doesn't start wars with them. Through the window, Elena could see Lisatel working with a group of mixed-species families. The young Thylorian mother had become one of the Academy's most effective counselors, helping parents navigate the emotional complexities of raising bridge children. How is she adapting? Dr. Chen asked, following Elena's gaze. Better than expected. The Harmony Council has officially pardoned her for leaving Thylos Prime. Apparently, having the mother of the first bridge child as an exile was becoming politically embarrassing. And personally? Elena smiled. She's thriving. Yesterday I found her teaching human children traditional Thylorian harmonies. They were glowing with joy, literally glowing. It's becoming a regular occurrence. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Elena activated her wrist display to see Admiral Santos's face. Dr. Vasquez, the Admiral said, her expression grave. We have a situation. Long-range sensors have detected an unknown fleet approaching from the outer rim. They're not responding to communications, and their technology is unlike anything we've encountered. Elena felt a chill of premonition. How long until they arrive? 18 hours. Both Earth and Thylos fleets are mobilizing, but... Santos paused. Dr. Vasquez, we think they might be looking for the bridge children. Elena's blood turned to ice. What makes you think that? Because they're broadcasting a signal on the same neural frequency as the bridging effect. It's like they're following a trail. Dr. Chen had gone pale. Another species with bridging capabilities? Or one that fears them, Elena said grimly. Admiral, I need to examine that signal data immediately. Already on its way. But Elena, if these newcomers are hostile to bridge children, the Academy could become a target. Elena looked through the observation window at the children playing peacefully below. Among them, Nyatel looked up and met her eyes, the toddler's expression suddenly worried despite her young age. I understand, Admiral. We'll be ready. As the transmission ended, Elena felt a familiar presence brushing against her consciousness. Nyatel was trying to bridge with her from across the room, seeking comfort and understanding. Something's coming, the child's wordless thoughts conveyed. Something that remembers the old fears. Elena knelt and opened her arms as Nyatel ran to her. The little girl was trembling, her skin patterns cycling through rapid configurations of anxiety. What is it, sweetheart? Elena asked, switching to the hybrid language of words and empathic sharing that had developed naturally between them. The angry ones, Nyatel's mind whispered. They made the others like us go away. Long ago. Elena felt ice in her veins. Through her connection with Nyatel, she was getting glimpses of something ancient and terrible, a species that had encountered bridge children before and responded with violence. Dr. Chen, Elena said urgently, contact Lisatel. We need to gather all the children and their families. Now. Elena, what's wrong? But before Elena could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The unknown fleet had arrived early. The Vex Dominion had not come to negotiate. Elena stood in the Academy's command center, holding Nyatel while watching the alien fleet deploy around their station. The ships were crystalline structures that seemed to absorb light, making them appear like dark wounds against the stars. Their very presence felt wrong, a psychic static that made every bridge child on the station cry out in distress. "They're jamming all communications," reported Commander Hayes, the station's military liaison. "No response to any of our attempts at contact." "Because they don't want to talk," Elena said grimly. Through her link with Nyatel, she was receiving fragmented images from the approaching aliens, memories of other bridge children from centuries past, and the systematic destruction that had followed. "Dr. Vasquez," Admiral Santos's voice crackled through the interference. "We're reading massive energy buildups on their ships. Whatever they're planning." The transmission cut off as the first blast struck the Academy's shields. Elena felt Nyatel's terror spike, and through the child's consciousness, she sensed the panic of every bridge child on the station. 63 young minds crying out in fear, their distress creating a resonance cascade that threatened to tear apart their carefully controlled abilities. "Evacuate the children to the intersections," Elena ordered. "And get me a secure channel to the Thylorian fleet." "Elena," Lisatel appeared at her side, her skin patterns blazing with protective fury. "They mean to kill us all. I can feel their hatred through Nyatel's connection." Elena nodded grimly. The Vex Dominion encountered bridge children before, thousands of years ago. They view neural bridging as a form of mental contamination that must be eliminated. Another blast rocked the station, and Elena felt the Academy's shields beginning to weaken. Through the viewports, she could see human and Thylorian ships engaging the Vex fleet, but the crystalline vessels were absorbing their weapons' fire and growing stronger. "Their technology feeds on energy," Dr. Chen reported, studying the sensor readings. "Every shot we fire makes them more powerful." Elena felt desperation rising. The combined fleets of two species weren't enough to stop the Vex, and the bridge children were too young and frightened to mount any kind of coordinated response. In minutes, everything they'd built would be destroyed. Then Nyatel looked up at her with those ancient, wise eyes and spoke her first clear words, "Not afraid anymore." Elena felt the toddler's consciousness expanding, reaching out to every bridge child on the station. Instead of the chaotic terror they'd been broadcasting, Nyatel was projecting calm, strength, and something Elena had never felt before, the full power of coordinated bridging. "Everyone," Elena called to the mixed crowd of humans and Thylorians in the command center. "Give her your hands." They formed a circle, parents, teachers, scientists, and children, with Nyatel at the center. Elena felt the neural bridge opening not just between individuals, but between entire species, creating a network of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. Through Nyatel's enhanced abilities, Elena could suddenly sense every bridge child who had ever lived, their experiences and knowledge flowing through the network. She saw the truth about the Vex Dominion, a species so terrified of losing their individual identity that they had isolated themselves from all mental contact, becoming cold and mechanistic in their pursuit of psychic purity. "They're not evil," Elena realized aloud. "They're afraid. Afraid of what bridging might do to them." "Show them," came Nyatel's wordless response. "Show them it's safe." Elena understood. Instead of fighting the Vex, they would bridge with them, not by force, but by invitation. She felt the network of bridge children across the galaxy focusing their combined abilities, creating a gentle wave of empathic contact that swept toward the attacking fleet. For a moment, the Vex ships stopped firing. Elena felt alien minds touching the network, cold, rigid consciousness that had not known empathy for millennia. The Vex Dominion experienced human warmth, Thylorian harmony, and the innocent joy of children who saw differences as wonders rather than threats. "We, remember," came a thought from the lead Vex ship, transmitted in harmonics of crystalline beauty. "Long ago, we too could touch other minds. Before the fear made us empty." "You can learn again," Elena said, projecting her thoughts through the bridge. "The children can teach you." The battle stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Vex ships powered down their weapons, and Elena felt their collective consciousness, ancient, lonely, and desperate for the connection they had denied themselves for eons. Over the following hours, a new kind of first contact unfolded. Vex beings materialized on the Academy's docking bays, tall, crystalline entities whose bodies had been shaped by millennia of isolation. They moved hesitantly at first, overwhelmed by the emotional richness of the bridge children's environment. "So much feeling," one of them said, its voice like wind chimes. "We had forgotten that consciousness could be warm." Elena watched as Nyatel approached the towering alien without fear, reaching up to touch its crystalline surface. The moment of contact sent gentle light cascading through the Vex being's form, and for the first time in centuries, it experienced joy. "The network is expanding," Dr. Chen reported with awe. "Bridge children are awakening on worlds throughout Vex space. Species they conquered centuries ago are rediscovering their own bridging abilities." Elena nodded, feeling the vast web of consciousness spreading across the galaxy. What had started with one crying baby was becoming something unprecedented, a true galactic community bound not by politics or trade, but by understanding and empathy. "What happens now?" Lisatel asked, watching as more Vex beings emerged from their ships to meet the Academy's residents. Elena looked down at Nyatel, who was now surrounded by children from 4 different species, all playing together in perfect harmony. The little girl who had once cried inconsolably was teaching the galaxy's loneliest species how to feel again. "Now we grow," Elena said. "We learn. We become what we were always meant to be, not separate species struggling for survival, but one people sharing the stars." In the nursery that evening, Elena tucked Nyatel into her sleeping pod, the child's skin patterns cycling through gentle, contented hues. Through their bond, Elena could feel the vast network of bridge children across the galaxy, no longer isolated gifts, but a connected community working to heal centuries of fear and mistrust. "Sleep well, little bridge builder," Elena whispered. "Tomorrow we'll teach the galaxy how to truly listen to each other." As Nyatel drifted off to sleep, her consciousness radiating peace to every corner of the Academy, Elena realized that her choice to help a crying alien baby had become the foundation for something miraculous, the first day of genuine galactic civilization. The stranger who had stepped in when everything seemed hopeless had become exactly what the universe needed, a mother to the future itself. 5 years had passed since the Vex awakening, and the galaxy was unrecognizable. Elena stood on the observation deck of New Harmony Station, the largest of the 17 bridge academies now scattered across known space. Below her, the central plaza bustled with beings from 43 different species, their children playing together in ways that defied every biological and sociological model ever developed. "Mama Elena," a familiar voice called. Elena turned to see Nyatel approaching, now 6 years old and radiating the confident glow of a child who had never known xenophobia. Behind her trailed a group of youngsters from a dozen species, their neural patterns intertwining in a casual display of empathic communion. "How was your lesson today?" Elena asked, kneeling to embrace the child who had changed everything. "We learned about the Silent Ones," Nyatel said, her skin patterns shifting to display complex mathematical equations. "They're trying to reach us from the dark between, but they're scared to bridge. Their thoughts taste like loneliness mixed with starlight." Elena felt a familiar chill. The Silent Ones were the galaxy's greatest mystery, an ancient civilization that had supposedly vanished eons ago, leaving behind only ruins and whispered legends. But the bridge children had been detecting their presence for months, sensing minds that existed in some parallel dimension accessible only through the deepest levels of neural bridging. "Nyatel," Elena said carefully, "you know the rules about contacting unknown consciousnesses." "But they're not unknown," protested ZYX, a young Vex crystalline being whose faceted form sparkled with excitement. "They're the old teachers. The first ones who learned to bridge." Dr. Chen approached from across the plaza, her expression troubled. "Elena, we need to talk. The Council of Bridges is requesting an emergency session." Elena felt her stomach tighten. The council was composed of the most experienced bridge children, now teenagers and young adults who had grown up in the Academy network. If they were calling an emergency session, something significant was happening. "What's the situation?" Elena asked. "The children have been making unauthorized contact with extra-dimensional entities. The adult supervisors are detecting massive neural resonance spikes, and several governments are expressing concern about unknown alien influences." Elena looked down at Nyatel, who was trying to appear innocent despite the telltale shimmer of active bridging around her consciousness. How many of you have been talking to the Silent Ones? All of us, Nyatel admitted. They've been teaching us new harmonies, showing us how to bridge across space and time. Mom Elena, they're not dangerous, they're beautiful. That's exactly what we're afraid of, Dr. Chen said grimly. Elena, some of these children are developing abilities that go far beyond anything we've seen before. Yesterday, Marcus, you remember the human boy from the first academy class, he bridged with a consciousness on a planet 60 light-years away. Instantaneous communication across interstellar distances. Elena felt the implications hitting her like a physical blow. The political ramifications are already causing panic, Dr. Chen confirmed. Earth's government is demanding immediate restrictions on bridge children activities. The Thylorean Harmony Council is calling for investigation into possible dimensional contamination. Even the Vex Collective is expressing concern about uncontrolled consciousness expansion. A soft chime echoed across the plaza, and Elena felt the familiar tingle of a network-wide bridge forming. The children throughout the station were connecting, sharing their concern about the adult anxiety they could sense. Emergency session in Conference Hall 1, announced the station's AI. All senior academy staff report immediately. As they walked toward the meeting, Elena could feel the weight of history pressing down on her again. 5 years ago, she'd helped prevent a war by demonstrating that bridging could be controlled and peaceful. Now it seemed the children were evolving beyond her ability to guide them. The conference hall was filled with worried faces from across the species spectrum. Admiral Santos participated via hologram from Earth, her expression grim. Queen Valthera's daughter, now the Thylorean representative to the Academy Council, sat rigidly in her chair. Even the Vex collective consciousness had manifested a physical avatar for the meeting. The situation is unprecedented, Admiral Santos began without preamble. We're detecting bridge children making contact with entities that exist outside normal space-time. The security implications are irrelevant, interrupted Marcus Chen, now 17 and serving as the elected representative of the Academy students. His once human consciousness now sparkled with multi-species influences, making him barely recognizable as the boy Elena had once known. The Silent Ones aren't invaders. They're refugees. Refugees from what? Queen Valthera's daughter demanded. Marcus's eyes took on the distant look that indicated deep bridging. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that belonged to no single species. From the convergence. A cosmic event that occurs every million years, when the barriers between dimensions become thin. They're trying to warn us. Elena felt the temperature in the room seem to drop. Warn us about what? About what happens when consciousness evolves too quickly without wisdom to guide it, Marcus said. The Silent Ones were like us once, species learning to bridge across their differences. But they pushed too hard, too fast. When the convergence came, they weren't ready. Ready for what? Dr. Chen asked. Nyatel stepped forward from where she'd been quietly observing with the other children. Her skin patterns were displaying configurations Elena had never seen before, ancient symbols that seemed to carry meaning beyond language. Ready to choose, she said simply. When consciousness grows big enough, it has to decide what to become. Stay separate and safe, or merge completely and risk losing everything that makes us, us. Elena felt pieces clicking together in her mind. The resonance war. The Vex isolation. Every species in the galaxy has faced this choice before. And most chose separation, Marcus confirmed. But the universe is changing. The barriers between dimensions are weakening again. Soon, every consciousness in the galaxy will be connected whether we want it or not. Admiral Santos's hologram flickered with interference. Are you saying we're facing some kind of cosmic deadline? 18 months, Nyatel said with the certainty of a child who had touched eternity. When the convergence reaches its peak, every mind in the galaxy will be forced to bridge. Species that haven't learned to do it safely will be destroyed by the feedback. The room erupted in anxious voices from a dozen species. Elena felt the familiar chaos of fear threatening to overwhelm rational thought, just like during the crisis with the Vex. "Stop," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had bridged with gods and children alike. "This is exactly the kind of panic that makes bridging dangerous. We need to approach this systematically." "How?" Queen Vaelthera's daughter asked. "How do we prepare an entire galaxy for something like this?" Elena looked around the room at the faces of beings from across known space, former enemies who had learned to work together, children who had grown up seeing diversity as strength, and ancient species discovering empathy for the first time. "The same way we always have," she said. "One connection at a time. One choice to trust instead of fear. One decision to help instead of hurt." Nyatel moved to Elena's side, her small hand slipping into Elena's larger one. Through their bond, Elena felt the vast network of bridge children across the galaxy, no longer afraid but determined. They had 18 months to teach an entire galaxy what she had learned in a transit station 5 years ago, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is help a stranger's child stop crying. "The silent ones chose isolation and survived," Nyatel said, her young voice carrying ancient wisdom. "But survival isn't the same as living. We're going to choose differently." Elena squeezed the little girl's hand, feeling the weight of the galaxy's future in their shared consciousness. "Then we'd better get started." As the meeting dissolved into planning committees and emergency protocols, Elena realized that her journey from frustrated scientist to cosmic midwife was far from over. The universe was about to give birth to something unprecedented, and she was going to help deliver it, one bridge child at a time.